Welcome back. Today I wanted to discuss something in Argus, enterprise, and in commercial real estate financial modeling that can often be kind of tricky for people that are just getting started, and it can be kind of tough to wrap your head around in the beginning. And that is the way that the renewal probability that you put on an in-place tenant affects the leasing costs when that tenant expires, and the leasing timing. So before we get into it, I just want to let you guys know if you guys find this information helpful or useful or just interesting. I'm going to be coming out with one of these videos at least every week. So make sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with that info. So with that, let's get into it. So you'll see here on the screen, this is the market input tab on a property here in Argus Enterprise, and I've got open the market leasing sub-tab, and this is essentially the market leasing assumption that you create for a tenant that is currently on your rent roll. Every tenant that's on the rent roll has a market leasing assumption assigned to them, so that when that tenant expires in the analysis hold, Argus basically knows what to do with the tenant, whether you want them to vacate, stay, or what that is and what costs go into that if they stay or vacate. And the main way that Argus kind of decides what to do with that and what costs to assign to it is via the renewal probability. The renewal probability basically just states we believe that this tenant has a 75% chance in this case of staying at the property after their lease expires and executing a renewal. 75% is a really common figure seen. Generally if tenants are happy at a property, you can assume that it's, a fairly good likelihood that they'll want to stay there and execute a renewal, especially if they have equipment in the space and what have you. So the way that Argus uses this is basically what we would refer to as blending in terms of costs and downtime. And the first example I wanted to give of this is on the downtime. And so the input for the downtime in Argus is this months vacant that you see right next to the renewal input there. So on this particular market leasing assumption, we have a 6-month downtime, which means if this tenant were to vacate the property, it will take us 6 months to backfill the space. So the way to kind of think about this for Argus is, Argus isn't flipping a coin and deciding, hey, sometimes in this scenario we'll have them vacate and sometimes they won't. The way that Argus is thinking about it is it's taking that 6-month downtime that it would take us to backfill the space, and it's assigning a probability to it or a percentage to it. And in this case, since there's a 75% chance that that tenant stays, there's a 25% chance that they vacate. So that's the probability that we want to assign to that 6-month period. So what Argus is going to do when you input that 6 months is it's going to say 25% of the time this will happen. So it's going to take 25% and it's going to multiply it by the amount that you put in for the downtime. So 6 months times 25% is 1.5 months. Obviously, it's going to round up. It's not going to do half months. So what Argus is going to say is instead of just deciding whether or not the tenant stays or leaves, it's going to just assign 2 months of downtime and then pick that income back up. And so this is what it looks like in a Argus cash flow statement when it's broken down by months. You'll see in months 18, 19, 20, 21, moving through, this tenant expires December 2021. You'll see the income cuts off when the tenant expires. There's 2 months of what's called blended downtime, and then that income picks back up. So instead of Argus just deciding at random if the tenant quote unquote stays or leaves, it's just going to assign basically a probability weighting to the amount that you put in for downtime. Another example of this, I'll give one more here, that it uses this renewal probability as a means of weighting cash flows, is going to be on your TI dollars, or your tenant improvement allowance dollars. This is, other than leasing commissions, TI dollars are the main cost of either getting a tenant to stay in a space, giving them renewal TI dollars, or putting a new tenant in the space with new TI dollars. Now, new TI dollars are going to be a little bit more because a new tenant is going to need a little bit more of an intensive build out in their space. They'll probably have new equipment, some of that will go towards moving costs. In some cases, tenants are allowed to use some of that towards their first month rent. And it's a way to entice new tenants to a vacant space. On the renewal side, you're going to give those tenants a little bit less because they're already in the space, but you do want to entice them to stay in that space, and maybe they want to make some upgrades to their space or something like that, but it just kind of sweetens the deal to keep them there. So in a similar way, as we talked about with the downtime, Argus is going to assign a probability of each of these scenarios happening, essentially. So there's a 75% chance in our instance here that we have to execute this $5 scenario, and there's a 25% chance that we have to go out and get a new tenant, and it costs $12.50. So you'll see the way Argus is calculating this is it's taking 75% times that $5 amount to give us $3.75 plus $12.50 times the 25% amount, which is $3 and call it 13 cents. Argus is not going to round that, so it's going to give you an exact figure. And basically you just add those two figures together to get your blended TI amount. So same with the downtime. Argus isn't deciding whether or not this tenant leaves or stays. They're getting a blended figure, and that's what they're assigning to the cost in that month. So that blended figure is 6.875. Obviously, if this was in dollars and cents, we'd round that up. But for this example, we'll leave it at 6.875. And then this particular tenant that's in the space that this market leasing assumption is assigned to is a 40,384 square foot tenant. So basically, for the month that they roll, so the month after their expiration, they expire December 31st, 2021. So on January 1st, 2022, Argus is going to assign this tenant improvement cost to this tenant in the cash flows. And that total tenant improvement cost is what you see there, $277,640. And to show you that in the cash flow page, looks like this. So beginning in 2022 there, you're going to get this cost of $277,640. And you'll see right below it, there's a leasing commission cost. This is actually calculated the same way. It's the same formula that we just did for the tenant improvements. You do if you've got a different cost for a new leasing commission versus a renewal commission. It's kind of different in every market, but the way that Argus calculates it is going to be that blended rate like we had talked about. So that's how Argus thinks about that. Again, that's something that trips a lot of people up because, kind of the way your brain would naturally comprehend it is, if you've got say a 50% renewal probability, you would kind of assume that, hey, maybe the tenant stays, maybe they don't. So it's kind of confusing as to whether or not you would assign costs to that and what those costs would be. And so this is the way that it's done in Argus, and pretty much universally is by assigning this renewal probability to whatever those costs are, getting that blended amount, and that's the amount that's put into the cash flow page. So hope you found this helpful. Like I said, there will be more videos to come, hopefully at least one per week that will all be to do with commercial real estate financial modeling, and more specifically how Argus Enterprise is used to model commercial real estate deals. So make sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to be kept up with those new videos that will be coming out. Put a lot of time into these, so hope you guys find it helpful. Thank you so much.